Senator Jeff Flake spoke about his new book. Now, normally, none of us would give a fuck about this. And in the real world, nobody does give a fuck about this. There's like -8 people who are going to read his book. But I want to play this clip for you because he epitomizes the problem with establishment conservatism. Let's watch.
And that brings us to the other senator from Arizona, Jeff Flake, who the New York Times columnist David Brooks writes is sunny and kind in a time when politics has become a blood sport. He joins us today to talk about his new book, Conscience of a Conservative, a rejection of destructive politics and a return to principle. Welcome, Senator.
Thanks for having me on.
Why'd you write the book?
Well, I felt that just like Goldwater had felt in his time 56 years ago when he wrote the original Conscience of a Conservative, that the party had lost its way. And I think similarly today, the party has lost its way. We've given in to nativism and protectionism. And I think that if we're going to be a governing party in the future and a majority party, we've got to go back to traditional conservatism, limited government, economic freedom, individual responsibility, respect for free trade. Those are the principles that made us who we are.
One of the things you write in the book is it is not enough to be conservative anymore. You have to be vicious. What do you mean by that?
Well, if you look at the politics of today, I mean, the tape from last week at the White House and the language that was used then. And we've seen, unfortunately, too many examples of members of Congress and other elected officials using language, referring to your opponents in ways that you would have never done before, ascribing the worst motives to your opponents, and assuming that other Americans are the enemies. And that's just not the way it used to be, and I don't think it can be that way in the future.
That is rich. So these are the kind of Republicans who hashtag the resistance look at and go, oh, what an adult. What a good, reasonable, moderate conservative. And they say that because this guy is pretty open in his, disagreement with Trump, in his condemnation of Trump. Now, of course, when you look at his voting record, it tells a different story. He's for Neil Gorsuch. He's for virtually all of Trump's cabinet appointments. He's for taking your health care away. I mean, you go down the list, he's a tried and true far-right Republican. But because, every now and then he says, Mr. President, you're being crass. Because of that, you earn points with corporate Democrats and establishment Democrats and just loyalist Dems, and they go, see, how reasonable. So in many ways, he's similar to Bill Kristol, who's very anti-Trump, but he's also a neoconservative warmonger who's a horrible person and for horrible policies. David Frum, who wrote The Axis of Evil speech and big-time neocon, same thing. Evan McMuffin, just a far-right Utah Republican, conservative in virtually every way, but dislikes Donald Trump. You have these kinds of people are viewed as like, see, us liberals can work with these Republicans because they're moderate and reasonable. But okay, the problem again is the voting record is virtually identical to that of Trump, but they just say, as he said, look at the language used in the White House last week. So they're not going to curse. They're not going to be, quote, vicious, as they say, which in their circles means impolite. So they're not going to be like low class and say naughty things. No, woo, that would be terrible. Heaven forbid. They'll be very polite with a smile, and they'll be in with the country club crowd as they continue to vote to take away your health care and make your wages lower and screw over the American people and sell out to their corporate donors. But that's what's so frustrating about these guys, is they're every bit as despicable as Trump, but they mask it under, being polite, and that earns them points. And they go, and people go, oh, well, I mean, come on, they're more reasonable, see? He doesn't talk about grabbing people's pussies. He doesn't talk about how Steve Bannon sucks his own cock. He doesn't, those words are bad. Mommy told me when I was a kid, don't say that. Anyway, now can we vote to take away everybody's health care? I'd really appreciate that. That's how these guys act. That's how these guys think. And look at what David Brooks, I love the fact that he's bringing up what David Brooks said about him, as if anybody gives a fuck what David Brooks thinks outside the elite circles in New York and D.C. But David Brooks said, he's sunny and kind when politics is a blood sport. I don't give a fuck what his demeanor is. That is irrelevant. What's his voting record? What's he going to do? How do his policies affect regular people? And his policies are disgusting. And then, boom, we get to the heart of it in the next point. He says, well, the problem with the Republicans now is we've given in to nativism and protectionism. Oh, you see the trick they do there? So they're lumping in one horrible thing. Nativism is just a very nice way of saying bigotry, racism, almost like a soft version of white nationalism. I got all these brown people coming from across the borders and we got to get them out of here. He's saying, no, come on. Trump goes too far in that respect with this nativism. That's not a good thing. So he talks about how that's a bad thing, which he's right about. But then what's the very next thing he says? And protectionism. Wait, what? So he's taken one of the worst things about Trump, his bigotry, but one of the best things about Trump, his rhetoric on trade policy. And he's putting them together saying, see, they're both those things are equally bad. Whoa. So not wanting to outsource American jobs is as bad as bigotry. See, that's the problem, man. That's elitism 101. Let's not shit on the immigrants and the peasants as we have them do underpaid labor. Let's not be mean to them as we exploit them. And let's be polite to our fellow Americans as we outsource their jobs and take away their health care. That's Jeff Flake. That's establishment conservatism 101. And this is why I've maintained from the beginning, Trump is horrible because he now has made it so that in the eyes of many people, anything but Trump is acceptable. Well, I'm here to tell you, no, anything but Trump is not acceptable. There are different varieties and flavors of shittiness within the Republican Party in Washington, D.C. Now, understand, I think the voters are quite different because many of the voters, when you poll them, they say, yeah, no, I want Medicare for all. I want free college. I want a living wage. I want to tax the rich. These are people who describe themselves as conservative Republicans. So the voters are a different story, and many of them are our allies, and they might not even realize that they agree with ideas that are traditionally liberal ideas. But in terms of the Republicans in Washington, D.C., there are no moderates. There are no moderates there. It's one variety or another of trying to fuck you over and making bad decisions for the people. And Jeff Flake is the perfect example because he's positioned himself as anti-Trump and the adult in the room, but he explains why. He says, oh, Trump's not as in favor of outsourcing jobs as I am. By the way, don't worry, he is Jeff. He just does bullshit rhetoric to try to dupe people over. And oh my God, the crass language. So I won't curse as I take away your health care and lower your wages. Oh, what a hero you are, Jeff Flake. What a fucking hero you are.